Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. We are here again at FASTConversation, and today we have someone very special joining us all the way from the Philippines. We have Pat Gamo, who completed his
Good morning.
master's in counseling at the Monash University last year. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Ethel. Nice to be on this program.
Thank you for accepting our invitation to share your personal and professional experience on dealing with
anything for FASTCO and anything for the Filipinos in Australia.
Naks naman, lakas ng FASTCO kay Pat. So today what we're going to talk about is mental wellness of students, and Pat will share his experience as a student here in Australia. So I'll start with asking, if you look back at your experience as a student here in Melbourne, as a student in Monash, what were the two biggest challenges you had to face?
I think when people usually think of going to school, it's usually the academic part of the thing, or of the whole experience is what they would consider as their challenge. As you know, they might be thinking of the workload or the requirements that you need to fulfill for school, but that wasn't necessarily the case for me and for some of my other colleagues. In fact, some of the other scholars thought that the requirements for their schooling were very light compared to what they had to go through in the Philippines. But for me, I had never really lived by myself throughout my life. Moving to Australia was the first time that I would ever really just have to take care of myself and, be alone. So I think, if the umbrella challenge is that it was just being by myself, it was both taking care of myself and being away from my family. I'm a huge family guy, and I'm a huge relationship guy also. So I had no family, I had no relatives in Australia, save for a few distant uncles in Sydney, but I was in Melbourne, so I had nobody. Initially, I had nobody to kind of rely on if things got desperate. I mean, luckily it didn't, but it was really just me. So I had to pick up learning how to do the laundry, for example, by myself, or using the washer or the dryer, or cooking even. I like to eat, but I never really like to cook. And then, being away from my parents, being away from my siblings, my cousins, being away from my girlfriend, that was really, really hard. I experienced a really, really low point at a certain season while I was in Australia.
How did you cope with that?
It wasn't really. It didn't offer much of a consolation being able to FaceTime with my family and with my girlfriend, because I'm really used to spending a lot of time physically with them. Me and my family, we would be together every Sunday, for example, having dinner or having lunch. And it's not like it's just me and my parents and my siblings. It's also my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents. And then we would usually go to the cemetery afterwards. And then, it would be a fun time. And also with my girlfriend, I used to be able to, see her and be with her almost on at the very least twice a week. And then all of us, from shifting from, being with them almost the entire time to not being with them at all and only seeing them on a screen. But pretty much that helped, keeping constant communication lines open with the people I care about really, really helped. And I was also very open about my experience. I would always tell them that I miss them, that I miss being at home, or that like I felt like I was missing out on some of like the
things going on back at home.
Things going on back at home, like the gatherings that they would have every other week,
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff. Or if, for example, my girlfriend would attend this so and so event or have this so and so service, yeah, parang to me that I really felt like, oh man. At certain times, I would feel like I wish I didn't leave, or I wish I hadn't left na lang. But it really did help that for one thing, it's the communication lines that I had with them, and also the fact that I, as much as possible, I really immersed myself in the experience. So I made friends in Melbourne too. I made close relationships with not just the other not just with the scholars, but also with Australians. Some of my classmates are the people that I served with. So in Melbourne, while I was there, apart from going to church every Sunday, I would also serve at the local Hillsong church there. I played drums for them, so I would be with them on Thursday nights because we had this gathering thing. And then I would be with them on either Saturday or Sunday. Kasi, that's the regular service time anyway. So yeah.
So relationships, keeping the relationships and nurturing relationships both in the physical realm and in the virtual realm. But as a mental health professional, what are the resources that Filipino international students that they should be aware of? What should we be aware of that are available here? The resources, services that are available here in Australia.
Okay. In terms of mental wellness, I'll start from a very basic level. People, especially international students there, I'm sure, they didn't choose Australia randomly. I'm sure it was because they knew that there was a community that helped support, or a community of people of the same nationality. So I think that's the first thing that they should tap into. So for example, if they feel homesick, it's so easy to just reach out to somebody. Like for example, for us Filipinos, we have the community at St. Francis, and they have the mass second Sunday, for example, or first things first, they have FASTCO. A lot of Filipinos don't know to reach out to the Filipino community in Melbourne or in whichever part of Australia they are. But for sure, I mean, there's so many Filipinos everywhere, especially in Australia. So that's one. Second thing is also to nurture or to build relationships there, because for one thing, yes, of course, you should still keep in touch with your family who is back home, or at least with your friends and relatives who are still back here in the Philippines. But it's much different when you're also able to connect with people who can be physically there for you, and that you can actually build a community in. Because, for example, say you heavily relied on just being close with your relatives over Skype, and then suddenly something happens to you. Who are your emergency contacts? Still them? It's not. It takes about 8 hours to fly from Manila to Melbourne, and if an accident happens and nobody's kind of like responsible for you, then that 8 hours is
critical.
Diba? So definitely build friends or make friends there. In terms of professional help, having part of the requirement of being in school in the first place is having overseas health cover or overseas student health cover. So that affords us the same or almost similar benefits that Australians or citizens of Australia do.
The basic Medicare.
So yeah, and part of Medicare there is 6 sessions with a counselor, professional counselor, or a psychotherapist, or a psychiatrist. 6 to
10 siya.
10. 6
Yeah,
is
10.
base, and then if kailangan, or if after the 6th session the counselor makes recommendation to extend to 4 more, then it becomes 10. But it's generally 6 per year. Plus,
Yes.
as students naman, like for example in Monash, we had the free counseling service on campus. I think it's also because it's their thrust to keep up, mental health for students there. So I'm not sure if
Meron din.
in other unis in the University of Melbourne, or if in Swinburne or in Deakin, if they had the same kind of free service. Yeah,
I think in the big universities they would have. I don't know in the TAFE level and the smaller colleges.
Yeah.
But definitely in universities they would have it. They would have that. In Melbuni, I know for a fact meron sa Melbuni, meron sa RMIT.
Right.
And you just need to schedule. And again, it's free, just like the 10 the 6 to 10 sessions, and that's per calendar year that we are allocated part of our overseas student healthcare card.
Yep. I think that's also kasi, I think being a Filipino, the notion that we have, or the preconception that we have of mental healthcare, at least seeing a counselor or seeing a psychotherapist, is much different to how the Australians see it. It's not just for the severe problems anyway. It's also for the very, even if it's for academic stress or career help, that's something that they're equipped to do. I mean, if they're equipped to do the heavy stuff, they're also equipped to do the light stuff. So if you're having trouble adjusting, then they're definitely a resource. Plus, apart from the university resources that you might have access to, there are also free services around. Like some stuff I can note off the top of my head. There is Beyond Blue, which is I think they're online also. So if you need like online consultations and on the phone, there's also for the younger people, it's called Headspace. Headspace is for young people, and they have Headspace centers almost in every suburb, or at least if
outside
not
the city,
in your suburb, outside the city, but also like if not directly within your suburb, in a suburb pretty much near you. So whether you live in the north or the west or the east or within the city, there's a Headspace there. And that's for free also. Other things like I know St. Francis has pastoral counseling, and that's for free. There's also where I did my placement, the center's called City Care. That's like a ministry of Hillsong, but it's not pastoral counseling per se. It's professional counseling, and that's for free too. And they're all well equipped. Some of them might sure be on their placement, but they're training to do it anyway. And part of their training is to know if they can't handle it, then they'll just refer to a separate resource.
It's very critical to bear in mind that also that there are options around that are available.
Absolutely.
You find what suits you best, and that they are free. There's no cost, and some are even available on the phone. If you find that seeing someone face to face seems a bit more daunting, pwedeng on the phone. And then if you reach the level when it's crisis na talaga, and you're on the brink, there's even a suicide line.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many different lifeline, absolutely. And all of those things again are free. It's just that I think on the most part, I'm sure a lot of the schools and a lot of the different groups, like for us at FASTCO, we're always trying our best to make these resources known and available to students. But it's also important for students to be proactive in, having knowledge of or awareness of these services in the first place. I think it's a responsibility of the self to kind of know what resources are available to you, whether it's financial or whether it's, in terms of social or community, or whether it's about, professional help. So I know school initiatives have like a briefing or an orientation for new students, but a lot of the time students don't really pay attention. And I'm a suspect of, or a suspect. I'm guilty of that too. Like at certain orientations, I didn't pay attention, and then when I really needed something, I kind of had to look back and think back. Oh, okay. Buti na lang they sent the presentation slides over, so at least I had that. But then I'm not sure for other students who are coming in as not as scholars, and they didn't have the same, or they weren't afforded the same privilege of having that orientation. So I thank God for you guys at FASTCO, because you're doing this thing also. So it's pretty good.
So in your experience here, because my personal experience and from the people I know, the Filipino students I know, the biggest deterrent for me, even when I was studying in the US, was actually having the courage to go out and seek help, because of the stigma that we have towards only crazy people see professionals.
Right.
But you actually mentioned that they're not just there for the heavy lifting, that you don't have to wait until you're really on the end of your line. They're there even just for talks,
I always say to most people who are afraid of taking the leap, it's not even that much of a big leap. It's a pretty small thing. And I like to make analogies, or so for example, if you are sick, like physically sick, you see a physician or a doctor, it's your right and you have the freedom to do that. Or if you have legal problems, you consult with a lawyer. Or if you want to be, like for example, myself, when I was there, I wanted to become more physically fit. At Monash Sport, we had fitness instructors, or we had trainers, and it was free for me to consult with them, and it was my right and it was my privilege. So there are certain moments, or there are certain as times in your life where there's something that you need, and you don't have the capacity or the resources within yourself to kind of get that to help yourself. So you seek a professional to get assistance. But what people fail to think is that, or fail to see, is that you have as much right or freedom to seek help from a mental health professional as much as you do with a legal professional or a medical professional, or a fitness professional. We're all in the business to do it. That's our expertise, diba? Parang I don't know if it's a thing of like social convention, or it's a cultural thing that people have to deal with their mental problems by themselves. But that's not true. I mean, if everybody could deal with their mental problems by themselves, then there wouldn't psychologists wouldn't exist.
Right.
So, I think it could also be a fear thing, that they're afraid of being judged by the psychotherapist themselves. But it's part of our job not to judge. Like, we have an ethics, like a code of ethics that kind of dictates to us that you're not supposed to judge.
Plus,
and if we were,
bear in mind also, right, Pat, aside from the code of ethics of the practitioner, by law in Australia, your medical record, including your mental health record, will remain private. Your school doesn't have access to it unless you give explicit permission for it to be released, not even to your parents, unless it's a medical emergency.
Right. And
so no one will know, right? If you're seeing a counselor, unless you talk about it, unless you divulge that information, it's not going to affect your grades. So wala siyang bearing. sa
Yep.
grades mo?
And that's a thing even in the Philippines. Like information, information is confidential, and the only times that anybody in any part of wherever it is, whether it's in Australia or in the Philippines, the only time that counselors or therapists or psychiatrists or doctors release information is when there's a risk of harm to yourself. Now, if the withholding information is going to cause a risk of harm to yourself or to somebody else. And that's always also something that is judged or discerned um, comprehensively. It's like a snap judgment lang na parang, shucks, kung hindi ko sinabi sa ibang tao to, masasaktan niya siya. It's always something that is processed intensively. So yeah, I mean, so apart from the confidential information, the only ever time it's ever shared with anybody else is if you share it with somebody else. Or there's this thing for counselors in Australia to have supervision. And supervision is only necessary because it ensures that we're doing the right thing. Like, we're not naman 100% perfect. And we need accountability to see somebody else to kind of tell us, okay, who has more experience in the first place, to tell us that. Well, I think that was kind of unethical that you did there. How are you going to mitigate that next time, or how are you going to make up for that with that client, for example? So that's the only time we ever share, and even then, it's confidential still. And at that point, it's for the benefit of the person or of you, the person who is seeing the therapist or the counselor. So confidential, no judgment, and it's always to the benefit of the person seeing.
Right.
So there's not much to be afraid of, really. It's okay. Right. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, that's one of the slogans here, diba? Let me end by asking, on a whole, knowing what you know now as a professional, as a student, you lived here, what are three things that you think you would have brought with you from the Philippines when you moved here? Yung pwedeng bitbitin yung totoong pwedeng bitbitin, hindi pwedeng family.
Inisip ko na tuloy my mom, my girlfriend, and my dog. Pero, no, that's a good question. That's a tough question. There's so many different things.
It can be, pwede namang it's a small thing. It doesn't have to be something na sobrang significant. But I'm asking that because some of the people who might be listening, who might be watching, are moving pa lang to Melbourne, to Australia. So or do you think
ako naman on my side of things, it's the only things that you can't find there are the things that are of sentiment or of sentimental value to you. So definitely, if something like, for example, if you have a pillow, or if you have like a memento of your family that you for sure would want to keep, remember them by, then absolutely bring that. But for me, I brought the things that I felt like were necessary for me to keep my sanity. So for example, if you're a musician, or if you were into doing music, I brought my guitar with me, and I brought drumsticks with me. And eventually, because I was playing at church, I also brought my cymbals. I bought cymbals from there, and I brought them with me back home. So something that is from your hobby. So whether that's if it's a video game console like a Game Boy, or if it's PS4 or an Xbox, or if it's a PC. I mean, sure, you can buy it there, but if you already have one, then might as well just bring it with you. I know, like for example, si Gab. Gab is a fellow scholar of mine. He bought a PS4 from there. he also bought basketball shoes from the DFO. So, and then he started playing basketball also. So, definitely something that is your hobby or something that reminds you of home. So those are two things. The third thing, hobby stuff there.
Okay lang yung dalawa. I think those
I was
are
thinking,
plenty, di ba?
sure. I was gonna say like bring Lucky Me or bring sinigang mix, but you can buy those stuff from the Asian store, and honestly, Indomie is so much better than Lucky Me.
Well, you're lucky kasi
Yeah.
nasa Clayton kayo, madaming Asians.
Yes, and there are so many Asians. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, quick snacks, like small snacks that could remind you of home. Also,
Yeah.
like if Nissin's yakisoba or Lucky Me, just for the nostalgia of it. Then yeah, sure, absolutely, bring that with you because that's easy to bring anyway.
Yeah.
But going back, I think because it's like I said, it's of sentimental value to you. That pretty much covers like a whole range of things. So I'll keep it at those two things now.
All right,
Yeah.
Pat. Any other last words? You practice in the
Sure.
Philippines now. Tell us.
Yes.
You have a YouTube channel. Tell us about that.
Yes. So before I left Australia, I was looking for different things to specialize in because therapists have different specializations. And before I left, I was fortunate that the scholarship I had afforded us a specific amount to use on like conferences or workshops or training. So I specialized or I took workshops that specialized in depression, anxiety. So that's one. And then I also did a suicide intervention one. And I realized I did that because I heard so many news about young people in the Philippines dying by suicide. So I thought to myself, well, that's something that we need back here in the Philippines. So I started this social media advocacy. It's called PsychOfPat. Like it sounds like psychopath, but it's PsychOfPat because it's about demystifying or clearing up the myths and misconceptions of mental health. Whether it's all around the world or it's here in the Philippines. So, the misconceptions around depression. So it's a psychoeducational advocacy. I do vlogs, but it's really just episodes of, specific topics. Now I'm doing a series on depression. You can see that on YouTube. So I'm debunking certain things about, like, for example, 13 reasons why the show, why you shouldn't watch it or what's good about it and what's bad about it. So that kind of stuff. And then, talking about symptoms of depression, the phenomenon of the suicides of, celebrity high profile ones, like the recent suicides of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/psychophat and on YouTube also. Simple also. youtube.com/psychophat. I've been doing this for about March, April, May. So this is my 5th month into it. So it's not something that I do for money even or for self-promotion. It's just something that I do to help. I think that's one of the reasons that they chose me to be part of the Australia Awards in the first place is because we have that kind of heart for service, for national service. I'm actually going to be on DZMM later today. Kaso it's 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. your time. I know that they have Teleradio, and I'm not sure if they have TFC in Australia. But yeah,
There is.
There is. I'm not sure. Is
So,
there?
meron. If
I don't
they
know.
have a link, give me the link. Email me the link. And,
Sure.
and then we'll add it on the description of this video. Let's end with, I just wanted to, siguro final lang, is one of the
Words?
gusto ko lang sabihin that when we seek professional help, it's not only that they help us during our crisis mode or talk therapy but I think one, at least for me, the more critical and valuable contribution they have is they teach you strategies and skills that you
Yep.
take with you outside of the session, so that when you encounter difficulty, it minimizes the need to seek professional help ng immediately. And
Absolutely.
then
Absolutely.
parang muscle, 'di ba? You learn the skill and over
Yep.
time your muscle becomes stronger and resilient. Mental and
Yep.
emotional health, your resilience becomes stronger. And I think if
Yep.
nothing else, my sessions with counselors, yun yung pinaka valuable for me.
Absolutely, and that's a great analogy. I use that with clients and patients. I tell them that counseling or psychotherapy is like going to the gym, but it's a gym for your mind. So you build muscles to become more resilient, as a part, instead of building muscles to become strong. It's about becoming more flexible and resilient. So yeah, that's a good analogy, I think.
All right, thank you, Pat, for spending time with us. Good luck with your practice and with your advocacy.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you again in Melbourne.
Absolutely. Thank you also for inviting me to this, and really good on you guys for doing this kind of thing. It's not just, I think FASTCO is not just an advocacy. Not just a a community, but it's also advocacy, social movement. So great, really happy to have been part of FASTCO, and really happy to be of help to FASTCO now that I'm
even beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Ethel.